What was your "thank God I looked at the contract" moment? Bit long, but satisfying, to me at least. Was leasing with a big apartment complex where I had a garage along with my apartment. The lease contracts they cook up are 20 plus pages long and naturally slanted heavily in their favor, and they use them as clubs against their tenants. Generally scummy behavior all around. They removed their restricted access gates because they were tired of maintaining them and kept advertising it anyway, etc. So the contract comes up for renewal, and they, of course, raise the rent in both the apartments and the garage, counting on inertia to keep me there even though they're blatantly advertising a lower rate in the same model for new leases. Now at this point, I'm planning on leaving in a year anyway to buy my house, so I swallow it and tell them to write up the contract for me to review. I sit down and read the thing. You notice they've clearly left the garage fee off the contract, even though it's noted as being leased. I bite my tongue and read it over, and yes, according to the paperwork, the sum total of everything was the price of just the apartment, and the total is less than what I paid the previous year. I sign it, fully expecting to hear back that they made a mistake before the property manager countersigns it. A few days later, I got my fully executed contract on my doorstep. Now the fun begins. I wait until the bill shows up on their payment website and call them up saying, "There seems to be a mistake. You're charging me X dollars when my lease is for Y dollars. Please correct." They tell me they'll review. A couple days later, they call to say, "Oh, it's just a mistake in the paperwork. You can either pay the full amount or we can take the garage off your lease." Oh, no. My contract clearly states the apartment and the garage is the price. Please correct your billing. I paid them the amount owed per the contract in the first. Now come the threats, eviction, delinquent payment, going to affect credit, corporate lawyers. Luckily, I have prepaid legal services through my work. I call up the lawyer they refer me to and send off the contract. He calls me back the next day and says, "You're absolutely right. They don't have a leg to stand on here. Get their attorney to provide you in writing what they believe their legal basis is for demanding more than what's in the contract, and I'll take care of it." My favorite line in contracts like this is how they clearly state that this is the entirety of the agreement, so there's no chance of slipping in things on either side. The property manager calls me to come visit her in the office the same day and says she reviewed it with her attorney and he believes they're in the right because of generally advertised pricing, or some other such nonsense. She also implied that the person who wrote the contract was in danger of losing their job because of the issue, as if she wasn't more liable for signing it off on it. This is where I get to tell her I've also retained legal services and passed on what he said. The look on her face was priceless. She told me she'd take it back to them. End of the story, I received a very terse note dropped on my doorstep a day later saying they've removed the extra charge from my account. I've been happily living in my new house for 4 years now, but that still gives me a warm glow when I remember it. I live in a high cost of living area, so the detached one-car garage would have cost me $1,800 for the year. Not surprisingly, nobody was fired for the contract screw-up. Trying to guilt-trip this guy by saying the person who wrote the contract could lose their job? That's just disgusting. Story 2. Some workplace that demanded at least 4 years of employment, or else I would have had to pay for those 4 years as you would pay for a course, in case of earlier quitting. You're hired for a job, they send you to a 10-week training course teaching you how to do the job. There is a stipulation when you sign that if you quit within X amount of years, you have to pay them back for the training. They put a dollar amount of around $20,000 on my training with a 2-year no-compete clause. My company was known in the industry for having the best training school in that industry, but paid its employees relatively low compared to other companies. They had the no-compete clause to try and scare you away from receiving their top-of-the-line training, then quitting and going to a different company for more money right away. One of my buddies from training ended up quitting after 6 months or so. They threatened him with a repayment. He told them to kick rocks because he knew it wouldn't hold up in court. They ended up withholding his last check and taking any money in his 401k and leaving it at that. I don't know if that's legal, but that's what they did. They dropped the no-compete clause, but he could never be hired by that company again. Not that he was too worried about that. I should say this. I didn't verify any of what my friend told me. I'm just reporting what he told me when I asked him what happened when he quit, which was roughly 7 years ago now. He said they took his 401k, but he may have meant only the company match. We weren't fully vested until after 3 years. As far as the last paycheck, I don't know. They may have worked that out behind closed doors and he didn't tell me. I'm just repeating what he said 7 years ago. Story 3. Okay, this is just a piece of advice because I know there are actors out there who want to get into the business. I'm a talent agent and entertainment lawyer. I cannot tell you how many contracts I read that include things that are not enforceable by law or just plain illegal, but actors are so happy to get an agent they sign without looking. Hire a freaking lawyer. I used to charge $100 to read a contract when I still did it. It's worth it. An example. I had a client. Let's call her Jess. Jess is an incredible talent in voiceover. She, to this day, is one of my best clients. However, when Jess was first starting about 8 years ago, she signed a contract with an agency out of Kansas City. 2 years later, she left the agency and we picked her up and showed her our contract. She raised her eyebrows at her rates, asking, "How do you guys make anything with such low commission rates?" This, along with a few other things, made me ask if she had a copy of her old contract for me to read. So here we go. First, it stated that the agency's commission rate, percentage of actor earnings they get, was 45%. The industry standard, if you're a union, it can legally be no higher than 10%, and it usually never goes higher than 15% even for new talent that's non-union. Second, it stated a non-compete clause that lasted for 3 years and covered the entire US and Canada. Not enforceable, and if I'm being honest, I could make a judge throw that out on a dime, but it would cost you a lot of money for me to do. Usually you don't find non-compete clauses in acting agencies other than a penalty for breaking your contract with us early, which is, in our agency, we usually derive from an average of your earnings during the course of the current contract. Third, and this was a fun one, said that she could not deny appearing bare provided proper compensation. I was tempted to hammer this freaking company after reading this. Jess was a very attractive woman, but that changes nothing. Let me be clear to all actors, you have every right to deny a job for any reason you choose. If your agency pushes you into something against your own choice, you call a lawyer or your union rep if you have one. There were about 5 other stupid things about ownership and her responsibilities, but those are the main ones. Nothing makes me more sick than agencies taking advantage of kids pursuing their dream. They're freaking old-age snake oil salesmen who only survive off the desperation of people who have dreams. Being an actor is tough, and your agent is supposed to be on your side. It's an unwritten rule of the profession that, unless there are extreme circumstances, you hold the line with your client. That's literally the rules of my agency, and I've fired people for screwing over actors for their own gain. I could go all day, but please, if you're ever in a situation as an actor or performer where this is a contract, just hire a lawyer to consult and have them read it. It doesn't cost much in the grand scale of what you could lose, and they will always help you because if you're happy, then you'll come back if you need them. Damn, they asked a voice actor to go bare? Story 4. Looked at renting a house about 7 years ago, and the homeowner had inserted some of her own clauses into the standard tenancy agreement. Now, this is absolutely fine to do, but they were purposefully put into different sections of the document. So if you read the part detailing the security deposit, you wouldn't see her additions as she put them in another area in the paperwork. One clause was that no footwear of any kind can be worn inside the property. Failure to adhere to this will mean the whole property's carpeting must be professionally cleaned. Another was the waiving of the mandatory notice period before the homeowner can come by and inspect the property. There's supposed to be a minimum amount of time they must give you notice-wise before they can come over, unless there is a serious property fault, leak, etc., so that they can't just turn up unannounced. She wanted that waived so she could check we were treating her property right, and if we weren't, then we'd be immediately evicted. He also caught her telling a relative that she registers eviction proceedings upon the start of the tenancy so she can evict them as soon as she decides they've broken her rules. There was a mandatory waiting period between commencement of eviction proceedings and being able to actually get enforcement officers to evict a tenant. Not sure on the current rules on this anymore, as I don't have as much to do with rental properties now. Noped out of that house really quickly. Got a much bigger, cheaper house, albeit more of a death trap, a few streets away. It's amazing how many landlords think they know the law, and they really, really don't. Mostly these people tend to think, I can put anything in a lease and it's valid. But nope, wishful thinking. If you know they're wrong but count on bullying tenants who don't know any better and have little money to defend themselves. Oh, and since you're already halfway through the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel so you wouldn't miss out on any of my upcoming videos. Now let's get back to the stories. Story 5. My husband, then fiancé, was getting ready to buy a used car that's often used for street racing or rally racing. He doesn't do that, but it's a damn fun car to drive, and is pretty much sure to have aftermarket modifications if it's been owned by someone who used it for racing or as a status symbol. My husband had done his research and neither of us were going to be taken for a ride, and even though this was the car we absolutely wanted, we were prepared to walk away. It was fairly low mileage. The dealer, a third-party outfit, not a brand dealer, kept swearing up and down that the car was still under manufacturer's warranty and had no aftermarket mods. I was skeptical. I knew that if the car had any aftermarket mods, the warranty would be void for that portion of the car, if not the whole thing, depending on the extent of the influence of the mods. I read every piece of paperwork they wanted my husband to sign and explained them to him, but I couldn't find anything that guaranteed that the car was still under manufacturer's warranty. So I straight up told him to walk away from the deal unless they gave us a piece of paper that both parties signed that said exactly that. They did it. Lo and behold, the car had an aftermarket downpipe, a really nice one, that had been installed improperly. It was affecting the airflow through the engine and could have eventually caused permanent damage to the engine. It was going to cost us hundreds of dollars to either have it reinstalled properly or return the engine to its original unmodified state, which would have given us warranty compliance, yay. But, surprise, we had a piece of paper that gave us a hold on them. They tried to avoid us for a week or so until we left them a voicemail saying that if we didn't hear from them in 24 hours, they'd be hearing from our lawyer. And that's how we didn't pay for having the car restored to warranty specs. We even got to keep the downpipe. It's kinda spiffy. The car is a Mazda Speed 3. Story 6. I attended this college in 2011 and was supposed to have received my diploma the following year as it was a 9-month program. I never received it. I had moved, so I'm assuming that it was returned to sender when they sent it to my old address. They never called me about it either, as I couldn't attend grad at the time for personal reasons. I was interested in applying for university a bit later because I found out that the college I had gone to wasn't a recognized institution. So upon applying for university, they wanted the transcript from sketchy school. I went down there and told them I needed my diploma from there and that I never had received a copy in the first place. The receptionist was rude and checked the back only to tell me the original copy wasn't there and insisted that I needed to pay a fee of $35 to get it. I was pissed off because who the hell charges a fee for a diploma you didn't receive? So I paid the $35 even though I thought it was total BS. I really couldn't get over it after a while, so I rummaged through my documents I had signed when I first started the school program, and lo and behold, I found a line that said the first copy or original of the diploma is no charge, but that they do charge for additional copies. I'm fine with that additional copy part, but not for the original. I called their office and explained how I was charged for my first copy of my diploma that I never received, and also complained about how the receptionist treated me when I had tried to explain to her several times and nicely that I had never received my original copy. The person I spoke to found the original copy that I didn't receive. She was understanding and apologetic and said I could come back to get it and a refund. It was so satisfying coming back and seeing the pissy receptionist who basically had to admit she messed up. I realized she doesn't make the rules, but she really didn't have to be the way she was the first time around. I also know it's only $35, but I don't like being taken advantage of. Story 7. A certain shady-as-hell game publishing company offered to buy my RPG Maker game for $1,000 up front, with no royalties or anything. I'd be basically signing away the game rights to them entirely. This didn't really seem like a bad idea at the time since it took me less than a month to make the entire thing and I needed the money. However, in the contract it also states that the publisher would be permitted to change the game in any way they saw fit without your consent. I was absolutely not cool with this. Plus, it turned out that they had given the exact same offer to dozens of other RPG Maker devs, some of which had only made glorified tech demos, and the publishers seemed really desperate and pushy to try and get me and as many other people as possible to sign. All of this combined caused me to decline the offer in the end. Said publishers would then send me several desperate emails, encouraging me to take the offer even after I made it firmly clear that I was not interested. Then after I told my story on an RPG Maker forum and on Reddit about dealing with them, they made several legal threats against me and tried to blackmail me, which is why I'm not saying their name here. Anyway, some time passed after I finally managed to get the guy to bug off, and I started seeing horror stories pop up on various websites about the kind of crap this company put these RPG Maker devs through, including, but not limited to, introducing glitches into games that didn't exist in the original data that was sent to the publisher. This includes at least one instance where the game would crash 100% of the time at a specific point because the publisher removed a music track and didn't erase the code that calls for that music track, adding typos and grammatical errors to dialogue that didn't exist in the original data that was sent to the publisher, changing the plot of their game without the dev's consent or without even informing them such a change was being made, which caused a plot hole in the sequel that the dev was in the middle of making the games easier by strengthening allies, weakening enemies, and or introducing new items or equipment or skills that were overpowered. Also, apparently, puzzles had been changed to make them easier to solve. According to the publisher, all of these things were done to make the games better and more accessible. Unfortunately, the devs really couldn't do anything about it since they signed away all rights to the game for a measly $1,000. Story 8. My wife and I were at a car dealership buying our first car. The dealership was offering special no-interest financing for recent college grads, and we're using that to finance the car. The finance guy presented us with two options, a 3-year payment plan and a 5-year payment plan. The whole time he made it sound like the zero interest applied to both, and so we went for the 5-year plan to get a lower payment. Finance guy tried to get us to sign without reading the paperwork, but we weren't having that. Come to find out, the longer payment plan didn't qualify for the no-interest deal, and we were getting charged 6.5%, which is a hell of a lot of more than zero. We got pissy and threatened to walk out after we realized what they were trying to pull and got them to come down on the price. I know they've pulled that on other recent grads who don't read the paperwork and just sign. Always walk into the dealership with your own financing from your bank. Story 9. Mine wasn't really extreme, but my girlfriend and I were shopping for houses and we were checking out a townhouse-style condominium. The price was within our budget and the monthly maintenance fees were average for the area. It was an open house event hosted by a retailer, so the property's annual expenses were included in the pamphlet. I found that on top of the regular monthly maintenance fees, around $350, there was an additional expense of $800 every 6 months. I asked why there was an additional expense if there were already regular fees. She responded that the extra $1,600 per year was used to keep the fees low. I responded that the fees are average for the area and many places in the same neighborhood are already lower. Long story short, it was a nice house, but we didn't pursue it further. I'm on board with the idea of condo fees, but if they cover things that I would normally pay for like heat or water, snow removal, garden care, etc., and if needed, additional expenses for major upgrades like new roofs or doors or windows. But expecting 12 houses in the row complex to each kick in a $1,600 bonus every year without specific accountability isn't something that interests me. Story 10. I went to a reasonably well-advertised jewelry store to pick up an engagement ring. Knowing that I wanted it to be a surprise and that she would want to pick out her own ring in due time, I made sure that the ring would be returnable for full price, and even for a full refund from that store when I bought it for about $900. After the proposal, my then-fiancée found a ring she liked better at a different jeweler, so I went to return the ring. When I said I wanted to return the ring, the clerk said, "No problem, just sign this and we'll get you sorted out." I read the small paper and it stated something very close to, "I now confirm this sale to be a final sale and cannot be refunded or returned for any reason." I read it, pen in hand, looked at her and said, "Why would I sign that?" She took the slip back, got her manager, and I was able to get the full amount returned via the same way I paid, on my debit card. For those interested, it was a People's Jeweler in Vancouver. I'm really confused about what the clerk was trying to achieve. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy "What's your best, sorry, wrong number" moment. Story 3 is definitely worth it. See you in that video.